Our beaches and waterways are the lifeblood of Southwest Florida, and anything that damages them has a ripple effect through our community. Pictures of dead fish and green algae make for a bad image. But in this video essay, the News Press's Amy Bennett Williams speaks of the water woes, both man-made and natural in nature.
Water. In Southwest Florida, our relationship with it has always been as full of pleasure as it is with chronic struggle. The very reason most people choose to live here also creates one of our greatest challenges: how to sustain large-scale civilization in so very wet a place. Bounded by the Gulf, laced by rivers, and dappled with wetlands, water is ubiquitous in Florida, fed by abundant rainfall and the upwelling of myriad springs. And it's always moving. For centuries, the peninsula's water flowed north to south down the central spine of the state to Florida Bay, until we changed all that. Engineers seamed together the ancient valley's ponds, lakes, creeks, and river into one channeled waterway from Lake Okeechobee to the Gulf of Mexico. We built a dike around the fluid border of Lake Okeechobee's lower margin. We made the Caloosahatchee a canal hooked to the lake to act as a drain pipe. We fundamentally changed seasonal patterns. We made suburbs possible in what was once swampland. We dried up the Everglades for farming, and we reduced flooding around the lake. But the Caloosahatchee has always been more than a ditch. Ancient Indians built their civilization around its estuary. Other tribes did their own engineering upriver, hand-digging a canal in what's now Glades County to bypass a section of seasonal rapids. Early European settlers made war on the Indians, and in the footprints of their forts, settlements grew: Punta Rassa, Fort Myers, Fort Deneau. Before highways, the waters were our thoroughfares and our pantry, serving up abundant fish, oysters, and crabs. Well-heeled Northerners like Thomas Edison and Standard Oil President Ambrose McGregor came to enjoy the warmth and water, then spurred a new type of growth, one based on rest and recreation. By the early 1900s, the region was attracting the likes of Teddy Roosevelt, Henry DuPont, and J.P. Morgan, and the draw persists to this day. Tourism remains our leading industry. Hotels and motels line our waterfronts, as do thousands of homes, more than 31,000 of them on Lee County's canals, creeks, and coastline. Thousands more play in our water, boating, fishing, kayaking, exploring. But the more of us there are, the greater the strain on our most precious resource. All those homes ooze a stream of contaminants into our waterways: herbicides, pesticides, septic runoff. The farms and ranches that surround Lake Okeechobee contribute fertilizer and other chemicals as well. But since we've walled off the lake, when it gets too deep, we send its polluted water down the Caloosahatchee. It rushes past La Belle, Fort Myers, and Cape Coral out into the Gulf of Mexico. Too much, and the estuaries aren't salty enough. Living things die. Seagrass and oyster beds suffer. Nutrients feed algal blooms that harm other wildlife. Fishermen have trouble finding fish. Crabbers can't find blue crabs. Usually, the heavy flow of polluted water down the Caloosahatchee comes only in the wettest months. But this January, 11.5 inches of rain fell across Lee and Collier counties, with heavy rains upstream as well. As the water level in Lake O rose, managers opened the floodgates, sending about 9,000 cubic feet per second, billions of gallons, down the river toward the Gulf, as much as they could, given the limitations of gravity in the pumps. It was also far more water than the watershed could handle, even at the peak of health. Governor Rick Scott declared a state of emergency. Dirty water decreases property values, depresses home sales, cuts bookings at area hotels and motels. But help is on the way, state and federal water managers promise. Several projects to store or clean the water before it flows into the lake and after it leaves the lake are in the works. The man-made C-43 reservoir near La Belle will store vast amounts of water, so too much won't flow to the estuary too quickly when it rains. During the dry season, the reservoir will feed the estuary the fresh water it needs. At the same time, managers are working to send more water south to the Everglades rather than down the river. A series of new bridges will allow flows underneath roadways as cars stream between the two coasts. But even that natural-sounding solution carries problems. Because the Everglades is a national park, water sent there must be clean enough to meet federal standards. And the nearly extinct Cape Sable seaside sparrow lives in a small area in the now much drier Everglades. Making the glades wetter now could finish the birds off. Many groups have clamored for the state to buy more farmland south of the lake and move the water there. But many officials say it's important to concentrate on projects already on the drawing board. Changing priorities only delays solutions, they contend. One thing all stakeholders agree on: we have to keep talking to each other and keep working to save the lifeblood of Southwest Florida.